We go on a lot of road trips here in our Tesla Model Y and in our Tesla Model S that we had previously. And I've documented all of those, or many of them, on our YouTube channel up to this point. When it comes to food, if we have needed something that needs to stay cool, we have traditionally taken a soft cooler with some ice in it, or ice packs, or something to that effect. The problem with that is when you're on a road trip especially, you don't know where you're going to be able to get ice from, and sometimes we were camping out in the wilderness and there's definitely no ice available for any price out there. And it's just a hassle to have to go and try to find ice and put it in your cooler. And then also the ice that you put in your cooler eventually melts and then it leaves behind the water. I mean, that's how coolers have always worked. Well, that is until now we have this TesFridge. Here in the back of our Model Y, we now have a cooler, which is actually technically a fridge that is purpose built for the Tesla Model Y. And as you can see, it fills the entire sub trunk right here. This TesFridge is from Chery Industrial, and so they've sent this to me to evaluate, but they haven't dictated that I have to say anything in particular, so all of this testing and research and opinion is all of my own. I will, of course, include a link in the video description below to this refrigerator, and you can pick it up for yourself. As you can see, it has a little bit of space on either side for ventilation, and actually the ventilation is primarily coming from this side. Right here on the side, this round hole, that is where the fan blows out the hot air from the compressor. And so the compressor is up in this portion of the cooler, probably, I'm guessing, where these screws are and over. And then down here, there's the power cord that connects on that side. And then this is the control panel here. And then the power cord routes around over here and then plugs in to the 12-volt power socket that is right here. The cooler has two handles on it, one right here and one right here, and those work well for carrying it around. You can see that the cooler sits about flush with the sub-trunk, and if I put in here the sub-trunk cover, it rests right there on top of the cooler, no problem. And if this is the 7-seater Model Y, so you can see it has the two seats here in the very back. If you don't have that, if you have a 5-seater Model Y, then apparently the shape of the trunk below is a slightly different shape, and this cooler sits another inch down. So you can see it's a difference of about right here. Both of them work just fine, but just know there's a slight height difference there between the seating configurations. And then what they included in the kit is if you do want to have this cover over the top of the cooler, then it came with 6 of these spacers that stick on right here, and then those go between the rail and here to just give a little bit of space so that the hot air can get out from this compressor that is, extracting the hot air from the contents of the cooler. Then while you're on a road trip, you can have your luggage stacked on top of this board and still have the cooler beneath. It also comes with this towel for wiping it down, as well as the user manual for using it. And then of course it also comes with the power cord. Looking inside of the refrigerator, you can see that it's a 35-quart space in here, and that's 33 liters. And it's all the same exact square shape. It doesn't have any bump outs for the compressor or anything like that. It has a light here on the side to help illuminate the contents here. And that's about it. It's a pretty simple cooler that way, but this is a nice big shape. To turn it on, you simply press the power button briefly, and it turns on. The compressor starts doing its thing, and then you can see here it's set to max, so it will get up to temperature as quickly as possible. And then it shows you the voltage readout of the vehicle right now. So 15.5 volts is where the Model Y is. As you may know, the low voltage system of the newer Model Ys, it's a 16-volt system, so with a little bit of voltage sag, it's at 15.5 volts right now, DC, and at 46 degrees Fahrenheit inside. And then I can touch this gear icon over here, and it shows me what the current set temperature is. So I have this set currently to freezer temperatures at -4 degrees Fahrenheit, but I can easily press that and then push the up or down button here to adjust those temperatures. If you wanted it for a refrigerator, you'd probably want to go somewhere around 36 degrees, like that. And then you just stop pressing any buttons, and after 10 seconds, it'll take that input. Up here, it has some additional information about the functionality, about the on-off, temperature adjustment operation, which I just did. And then there's the eco and the max switching. And then lastly, up here, you can switch between Celsius and Fahrenheit by doing the same thing, pressing and holding the gear button for 3 seconds. So I'll show you that down here. You press and hold this for 3 seconds. So when you press Celsius, it goes between Fahrenheit and Celsius. And when you press the up button, it goes between eco and max. Now, one more functionality it has is the battery protection here. And this is where you can see here it's for low, medium, and high battery protection. It's cutting off at different voltage cutoff points at 10.1 volts, 11.2, and then 11.8. And I actually had a problem where in our trailer, the voltage was cutting off, and so I had to lower this in the trailer for it to work, because the running operational voltage in the trailer is much lower than it is here in the Model Y. The sides of the cooler are 1.78 inches thick, or 45 millimeters. So this can hold 48 cans of regular sized 11-ounce soda. And then the fridge itself weighs 38.2 pounds, or 17.32 kilograms, just empty like it is here. Now, one thing to note about the functionality is that there is no actual air moving inside that is cooled air. What it's doing is it's running the coolant through the refrigerant lines that are in the walls of this thing. And so it's cooling down the walls, which then, of course, cools down the inside passively through convection. So because of that, if you fill this with food initially and then turn it on, the food on the edges is going to get cold faster, and then it's going to move inward, and so the food in the center will get cold slowest. This also comes with an app that you can use to control the cooler and monitor it. So I'm going to come up here, scan this QR code, and let's look at the Android side, since that's what I have. Yep, TesFridge is the app. So I'm going to say go ahead and install it, and then I'll show you how that works. So the app is installed. I'm going to go ahead and hit open, and it says start searching. So first I'm going to turn on the cooler, and now it's on. And you can see right here it has a Bluetooth icon indicated. So then I'll hit start searching, and then I'll hit allow for the device location, and only this time. And then it's finding the cooler. Scan completed, and it's connected. Cool. So here it's showing the current temperature at 48 degrees, and then it's saying what do you want the set temperature to be, and it's giving some illustrations of, you know, soda versus fruit and ice cream, you know, things that need to be below freezing. So to adjust the set temperature, you can see I can tap and hold on this and just drag it up or down, and it's immediately changing that number on the freezer. So this is a much quicker way of doing it than individually pressing it over here, which is another way of doing it, but this is definitely faster if you pull out your phone. And then also, because it's showing you the current temperature, you can be up driving the car and see what it is in the back. And then also you have the gear icon up here in the top right corner that you can use to name the fridge, temperature alarm switch, you can enable that or disable it here, temperature unit, you can adjust that here, language, working mode, operational voltage, and then some information about their manufacturer website. Now that I've turned it on and shown you how the app works and the general stats about it, let's do a quick test on it so that we can test how quickly it will lower the temperature inside. So you can see here I have a thermometer at, just showing right now it's 80.9 degrees in Fahrenheit in here, and then I have a timer over here. So first I'm going to plug in the cooler over here, then I'll push the power button here, and that's going to come up showing 15.5 volts, and that it's at 69 degrees that the cooler mechanism is. You can see up here that it says it will take 3 minutes to turn on. See right there, once you turn it on, it takes 3 minutes to actually start to cool. But regardless, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the timer here, but we'll just take off that first 3 minutes. So now the timer started, and that's counting. I'm not going to open the cooler at all, and I'm just going to reference the information over here on this display to see what the temperature displays here versus what it shows over here. I just heard the compressor turn on, and now I'm adjusting the set temperature to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. So this would be freezer temperature, and that's kind of what the manual temperature was talking about. And then we're going to wait and see how long does it take this freezer to get all the way down to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. At least I'll look at what it takes to be indicated here on this screen versus the camera that's inside. And you can see now is 3 minutes on the timer over here that it has been running. Right now the ambient temperature is being measured by that Yolink device right there, and it's indicating 90.9 degrees Fahrenheit here at the time of this test. Also, something to note is that it's currently on its max setting right now. As a brief update here, I'm pretty surprised at how close these are together. This one's showing 64 degrees, and inside it was just showing 64, now it's gone to 63. I'll put on screen how long it took to get from 80 degrees down to 50, and now you can see that inside it's 50.3, and here it's just indicating 50. And my timer fell off its pedestal over here in the cardboard box, so I'm going to put this back in here now and just restart the timer here at 50 degrees, since that's what the manual was talking about of how long it takes. So yeah, showing 50 in there, and now the clock is going, counting up from there. And let's see how long it takes to get to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. As a brief update, it's now been 36 minutes on the timer since it was at 50 degrees, and it's now showing 26 degrees inside. and down here it's showing 17 degrees. So there's a pretty big delta between the temperatures indicated of these two different devices right here. But I would trust this one to be the actual temperature in that very spot, whereas this one is just the temperature of maybe the cooling system of the cooler. So I'll keep my eye on this, but definitely it's not going to go from 50 to -4 in half an hour. It's already past that. The ambient temperatures of this test started at 90 degrees Fahrenheit and ended at 99.9 degrees outside. So perhaps a bit of a worst case scenario, but then again, that was in the shade of our garage with the trunk open. If the car was parked in the sun and closed up, then cabin overheat protection would have kept the cabin around 95 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and it would have likely been even hotter here in the very back of the car. So I think this is a fair real-world test. Right at 69 minutes into the test, my lamp cut out, likely due to a cold battery since it turned back on after warming up. In any case, I got the data from the Yolink X3 temperature monitor, which I'll include a link to in the video description below because it works great and I highly recommend the Yolink products. It has now been a while, and you can see in here that my light shut off because it got too cold, I assume, especially because the battery's on the bottom of this lamp and it's really cold down there. The thermometer here is saying 9 degrees Fahrenheit. In any case, it's quite cold in here and it's cold enough to be a freezer. It didn't get down to the -4 degrees though. Here it indicates on the front display that it's at 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So it still has a little bit to go, but it's close enough in my opinion. But it definitely did not get that far in the half an hour that it stated. As an aside, while I was filming this, an Amazon van pulled up in front of our house and it was so quiet it didn't interrupt my filming, which was nice. And we actually used this recently on a camp out with our trailer, and I will insert my short review here now. Another great way to use this cooler is just on a camping trip. So here we are at the old folks campground on a trip, and I'll put a card above to this video once it's published. But you can see here I've just set up a table next to our trailer, and then on the side of our Lance 2185 is a 12-volt power socket, just like in the back of the Model Y right here. And that's powering the fridge. So right now it's set to 35 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see right there it's showing DC 12.9 volts, etc. And then if we open it up, you can see what we have in here right now is some garlic bread and 2 watermelons to get nice and cold. And we just put these in recently, so that's why it's at 59 degrees rather than 35, but it's trying to get to 35. And it's having to warm up this enormous amount of thermal mass that is the water inside of these 2 watermelons. But we'll be able to have nice cool watermelons. And then as the food in the other coolers potentially is going to get warm because ice is melting, we'll just move their food over here because this will constantly be able to stay cold. So we have our fridge inside the trailer, and that's the back side of this right here. And all of our food is in there. And so this is just extra fridge space. As a brief update on the cooler here, I currently have it set to 38 degrees and it's indicating 44 because we just barely loaded it up with more new food. The watermelons we had in here earlier and French bread is all gone, eaten. We have a new batch of food in here. It's indicating 59, but that's not accurate. I just barely put it in there. But I'm just kind of curious to see how, I'm sure this will keep working just fine, but it's been kind of fun to have some additional fridge capacity because our fridge in the trailer is mostly full at the moment as well. It's nice to have expanded capacity, and this is just running off of the low voltage power socket there on the side of the trailer. This indicates 33 degrees Fahrenheit, and when I look in here, that shows 44. I don't know how much longer it will take before this gets down to that point, but it's definitely taking longer when there's stuff in here. If there's only, if this is empty, then it gets down to the same temperature that's indicated here within just a few minutes. It's really fast. And if I touch the walls here, there's actually ice. This is like crusty ice on the walls. So the sides are getting quite cold, and this seems to just indicate the temperature of the sides of the cooler and not necessarily the actual internal temperature, because it depends on the thermal mass of everything in here. You can see there's some milk, for instance, that's mostly water, and that takes a long time to cool down. So all these things are taking a while to cool down, but the walls are quite cold, so that's good. But you can see this went up a degree because I'm leaving the door open, so we'll close that again. But yeah, it's been working great. As an update on the cooler here, it's been all night unopened. Right now it says it's 37 inside and it's set to 36, so it's pretty close. And let's see what it actually is inside. 39. Okay, so it's fairly accurate if it's been all night and nothing's been changing the temperature because it's been opened or anything. The milk is not frozen, so that's good. I've now been using the cooler for a couple of days, and we used it on that camping trip. So I've had a chance to kind of run it through its paces, so to speak, and test it out. My number one thing that I really love about it is simply that you don't have to deal with ice, that you don't have to acquire that ice and the cost of that. and that it doesn't leave behind the water and get everything wet in the freezer. I like that the fridge is designed to fit optimally in the sub-trunk of the Model Y, and it uses up all that space nicely. A lot of coolers out on the market that aren't designed for this space specifically are just too square and rigid to fit in the space of the sub-trunk, which isn't a perfect square, and then they stick out or don't fit at all. And this is fitting in there optimally and filling all of the space. So if you want a lot of cooler space, this is the most optimal way to include it in the car. Now, that being said, it does take up the entire sub-trunk, and you might not need that much space that is cooled. You know, you might be just needing a little bit of cooled space. And so it's a little bit suboptimal for situations where you need less, obviously. In that case, maybe you would just bring a different kind of cooler, a smaller one, and have an ice pack in it still. Now, the obvious next thought on that is that this cooler isn't just for road trips. This is a great tool to have for just everyday living around town. Let's say you're going to your kid's soccer game and you're taking drinks. You could have the drinks for the kids in the cooler, and then when they're ready for them, you pull them out and they're all nice and cool. Or you could go to the grocery store and put your groceries in, like the things that need to be in the fridge, you put them in the Tesla fridge, and then you could continue running errands and you don't need to worry about getting home quickly with those groceries.
All right, Lid, Dad packed some Otter Pops in this fancy cooler. He put them in, it's now 5:45. He put them in at noon. So they've been in there for almost 6 hours. Will you pull them out, see if they're still frozen? Are they frozen?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Frozen hard? Yeah?
And most importantly, would be something that needs to be in the freezer, say ice cream. It's obviously going to melt quickly. You need to get home quickly and put it in the freezer. But in this case, you can just put it in the Tesla fridge, lower down the temperature down below freezing, and then leave it in the car. And it'll stay there for as long as the car is on. Now, to that point, the car's low voltage system is active anytime the car is being accessed in some manner. And I'll show you here on the screen what the user manual says about that. And I found the simplest way to just make sure that the cooler stays on is to use Sentry mode. Anytime Sentry mode is on, then the power ports are on as well. So if you just turn on Sentry mode, or it's probably on already, then you're fine and you don't need to worry about the cooler turning off. I think a lot of people would default to wanting to use camping mode to make sure that the power sockets stay active, but camping mode would not be the best solution, at least not optimal for energy consumption, because that means that the HVAC system is on, you know, the heating or the cooling. And so that means that you're going to be using up a lot more energy than is needed just to be running the Tesla fridge for keeping the whole car cool in the summer, as an example. So I would recommend just making sure that Sentry mode is activated when you walk away from the car, and then the fridge will stay on. One potential limitation of this fridge is that it doesn't have its own internal battery. Obviously, you could bring along a separate battery bank, such as Blue Eddy or other manufacturers have all kinds of battery banks that you could plug into a low voltage power socket on those and power this fridge. But that is additional equipment you would need to bring. That being said, if you have this in the car and you have your things being cooled and then you go somewhere and you're going to use that cooler, you could take it out of the Tesla and easily carry it along with those handles, bring it to your picnic table or whatever, and it will keep things cool in there for a while. It's well insulated, and then when you open it, you can eat your dinner or eat your lunch, your picnic, or whatever food is in there, and then you're done with preserving your food in that specific situation. But if you're trying to be away from the Tesla for sustained periods of time, you will need an alternate power source. If you did need to take it away from the Tesla and you had some ice available, you could just throw ice in there. It's not going to damage it by having ice. The whole tank is waterproof and it's all one continuous piece of plastic. So you could just use it like a traditional cooler in that case. I hope this has been helpful to see another accessory that you can use in your Tesla, and in this case the Model Y. But as I also showed with our camping trip, you can take it and power it from other 12-volt power sockets in other locations. Potentially, normal vehicles have these as well. Like, gas vehicles have these as well, and you could use this in a variety of situations, and I like that versatility. We will continue to use the cooler in the future on future trips, I'm sure, at some point, and I will report our findings with if we have any problems with it or how well it's working for us. With that, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.